In the dark of the night, when the moon is hidden behind dense clouds, the city is plunged into darkness and silence. Only the rustle of the wind and the noise of the leaves emphasize the loneliness of the dark streets. But on this night, the city was not the same as usual. Something mysterious and ominous hung in the air. Somewhere in the shadows of the trees and abandoned houses a shadow was gliding, something bestial, monstrous. His eyes glittered with red fire, and his fangs protruded like the evil living inside. It was a werewolf, a creature from nightmares, torn from the darkest corners of human fantasy. A sinister werewolf entered the city, following secret paths that only he could unravel. His dark fur absorbed the light, as if he were the darkness itself, designed to smolder in the hearts of the inhabitants. He made his way through narrow streets and dark alleys, leaving behind traces of indescribable fear. His first victim was an old manor house on the outskirts of the city. The walls of this abandoned building could tell many stories about the past, but today they witnessed a brutal attack. An evil werewolf burst into the room, his shadowy pose searching for a weak spot in the walls. The owners of the manor, an old man and his granddaughter, were defenseless before this beast. The night, filled with the sounds of breaking doors and muffled screams, witnessed the first bloody hunt of a werewolf. The bodies of the victims were discovered in the morning, mutilated, and the werewolf disappeared like a ghost in the dark. The city froze in horror. Residents had heard about ancient predictions predicting the arrival of a sinister werewolf, but no one believed that these legends would become reality. Fear began to permeate every corner of the city, as if the shadow of a werewolf gripped the hearts of people. The werewolf continued his vile hunt, choosing his victims carefully and skillfully. He avoided the traps that were set for him, and each time he went into the darkness, leaving behind only traces of blood and despair. At night, residents of the city hid in their homes, blocking doors and windows, but the shadow of the werewolf always remained in the air, reminding of the imminent threat. Meanwhile, in the depths of the forest, where the werewolf found his refuge, the sinister lord cursed his fate. An ancient ritual turned him into a beast, bringing darkness into his path. But something inside him protested, despite his malicious intentions. Fragments of human memories flashed through his mosaic soul, as if the last cry of his humanity was fighting for an exit. While the werewolf plunged the city into fear and chaos, somewhere in the dark corners of his mind, a part was awakening that wanted to be free from this cursed fate. But every time the light faded, that animal part of his soul took over, and he continued his bloody path. At that moment, a mysterious wanderer known as the Moon Trekker appeared in the city. He was a connoisseur of ancient legends and magic, and his arrival raised hopes for the end of the nightmare. The Moon Ranger made his way through the darkness, exploring every corner of the city in search of traces of the werewolf. The ranger dug up ancient scrolls and consulted with the sages, trying to find a way to stop the monster that invaded the city. He learned about ancient rituals and mysterious artifacts that, it was believed, could condemn a werewolf to eternal exile. But every time the Moon Ranger seemed to be close to a solution, the werewolf left him in the shadows, walking into the night like a ghost. The secret paths he followed became less predictable, and fear gripped the city even tighter. At some point, the Moon Ranger began to realize that the werewolf carries not only an ominous shadow, but also an internal struggle. He decided to explore the past of this dark creature, revealing the secrets of his past life and what led to his transformation. In the course of his research, the Moon Ranger learned about the tragic fate of a man who turned into a werewolf. He was a great warrior who defended the city from the dark forces, but his valor led to casualties among his loved ones. He was betrayed and rejected by his fellow humans, and in a last desperate act, he resorted to an ancient ritual, trying to gain strength to protect his loved ones. However, the ritual did not bring the power he expected. A sinister spirit has consumed him, turning him into a monstrous werewolf, whose soul is now torn between light and darkness. Faced with his own past and actions, the werewolf carried not only rage, but also grief. The Moon Ranger decided to use this knowledge to his advantage. He began to look for a way to awaken the human part of the werewolf's soul, hoping that he would be able to reconcile his darkness and light. At this time, the city was left in complete fear, not knowing when the werewolf would return to carry another soul into its dark abyss. With each new step of the Moon Ranger, the moment of solving the mystery of the werewolf was approaching. But the darkness did not give up. The werewolf, feeling that his past was being revealed, became more and more dangerous, carrying with him not only a physical threat, but also an internal conflict that strengthened his bestial essence. The city was waiting for its savior, not knowing that the one who was looking for answers would himself become the last hope of salvation. At the crossroads between light and darkness, between man and beast, the most dramatic chapter of this dark story unfolded. In the endless shadows of the forest, the Moon Ranger, armed with his knowledge and determination, approached the sinister hideout of the werewolf. The dark branches of the trees, like gnarled fingers, blocked his path, but he rushed forward, filling the air with the implacable energy of his decision. The werewolf, sensing the Pathfinder's approach, realized that his past and dark motivations were under threat. His dark eyes glittered with agony and rage as he stepped out of the shadows to meet his pursuer. The darkness in his heart stirred, and the beast essence began to awaken, ready to fight. The Moon Ranger, standing in front of the monster, did not see only a sinister shadow in it. He saw a mosaic soul split between light and darkness. His eyes, filled with compassion, met the red fire of the werewolf, as if inviting him to an inner reconciliation. "You can't run away from yourself," Moon Ranger said, his words carrying not only a warning, but also hope. "Your past cannot be forgotten, but you can find a way to heal." The werewolf responded with an animal growl, a curse bursting from the very depths of his soul. He couldn't just let go of his animal side, because it was part of his essence. But something in his inner core demanded freedom from this eternal sinister circle. The Moon Ranger began to tell the werewolf about his past, about a man who was ready to sacrifice everything for the sake of his loved ones. He painted pictures of their happiness, but their happiness was cloudy with despair, riddled with fear and betrayal. "You bring darkness because you were betrayed by your fellow humans," the Moon Ranger continued. "But you were also a hero whose actions deserve recognition. Your destiny is not only darkness, but also light." The werewolf wavered between light and darkness like an effervescent electric charge, confused in his inner struggle. Moon Ranger touched his animal fur, feeling the vibrations of the struggle inside. At that moment, the magic of ancient rituals and ominous predictions was felt in the air, like a spell come to life. In the city, fear held its vents, and every day was like the evening before a thunderstorm. But at this moment, when the Moon Ranger and the werewolf stood in front of each other, there was something new in the air. Uncertainty and hope slowly penetrated the dark corners of the city, like the first rays of light after a long night. And yet, nothing could have predicted the outcome of this meeting. The forces of light and darkness collided, creating a vortex of contradictions that tore the air. The struggle within the werewolf and the Moon Ranger became increasingly intense, as if a fiery dispute had broken out in the very essence of the world. The fate of the city hung in the balance, and only time will tell who will win in this dark saga. An unknown force was playing its game, spinning a tangle of secrets and predictions, creating an intrigue that outlined a real catastrophe or, perhaps, an unexpected turn that could change the fate of not only the werewolf, but the entire city. Suddenly, in a moment of intense silence, the darkness swallowed up all the sounds and vibrations of the air. The Moon Ranger and the werewolf, standing opposite each other, froze, as if time itself had slowed down. And at that moment, something unusual began to happen. The darkness seemed to recede, leaving behind a flutter of light. The werewolf felt his inner storm begin to subside, as if the demon in him had found temporary peace. The Moon Ranger, his gaze filled with unknown wisdom, uttered words that swept through the air like a spell. It's time to make a choice. Wolf in the midst of darkness, accept your light, heal your soul. The power of the words, like a spell, enveloped the werewolf, and at the same moment his dark fur began to glow with a soft glow. His eyes lost their red fire, twinkling like stars in the night sky. Instead of animal aggression, a glint of the human soul appeared in his gaze. The surrounding darkness dissipated like a terrified nightmare, and the Moon Ranger watched in amazement as the werewolf, set in motion by the power of an unknown choice, now stood before him in a new light. But the mystery of this meeting only intensified. What happened at that moment, and how was the werewolf able to reconcile his darkness with light? The answers remained in the realm of the unknown, like a riddle whose solution eludes today. Thus ended the dark saga in the city, but the traces of this meeting remained in the hearts of the residents. The intrigue started by the arrival of the sinister werewolf gave an unexpected twist, leaving unanswered questions in the air. The city continued to flow, but something had changed in its dark corners, and in everyone who heard about this mysterious meeting. There was an inexpressible trace of mysterious magic. Maybe, in the light of a new day, there will be hope in the hearts of residents for the reconciliation of light and darkness, for the bright changes that an unexpected meeting in the night will bring.